All right, to further analyze this story, let's bring in Shweta Narayan. She is an environment campaigner for global climate. Shweta, good to have you on the show. All right, so let's talk about finance, because this is very important in terms of whether or not we meet our targets or not. And I want to remind you of this conventional critique of climate finance, is that, too little is done. But when you look at the numbers, I think it was in 2008, the OECD came out and said that the rich countries are going to come out and provide $100 billion a year. And I think only $300 million in seed money was actually put in. This is not a good sign.
Not at all. Thank you very much. Yes. And I think what we have seen in the last few years, that the crisis has exacerbated. It's playing a havoc with communities around the world, and the number of extreme weather events and the associated loss not just in terms of property but in people's health has increased significantly. We're not even counting that cost. And in terms of the money that is flowing, is, as you said, it's too little, and unfortunately, I don't want it to become too little too late. But it is unfortunately looking like that. Rich nations need to pay the money to the developing countries and most vulnerable countries who are facing the health impacts, the environmental impacts, disruptions because of extreme weather events, and have very little contribution in the crisis itself. They need the money to be able to survive, to find their way out. And I think the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is the fact that we are not talking seriously about phasing out of fossil fuels. We know the science is clear, the evidence is clear that fossil fuels drives climate crisis. And from a health perspective, it's the greatest threat to human health right now. And we need a transition, an urgent, just transition away from fossil fuels. And when I say just, I mean that it has to be financed by rich countries who have large contributions to this climate crisis. It has to be equitable. It can't make poor countries more poorer. It should be able to build the capacities to cope with this crisis in a way that they have all the means to protect their populations and to also develop in a sustainable manner.
Let's talk about this global climate finance center that's being set up in Abu Dhabi. I think one of their main goals, as I've stated, is how do you get more investment into low carbon projects? Aren't we approaching the problem from the wrong side here? I mean, isn't the fact the price of carbon going to be a more determinant factor in terms of decarbonization than actually getting funds into low carbon projects?
I must admit that I'm not a financial expert. I'm just learning right now with all these developments. I'm still crunching information, so unfortunately, I would not be able to comment.
Let me ask you another question then.
Yes, please.
Sorry for interrupting. All right, so you said in your previous answer that you wanted that we need to see rich countries pay their share so they can assist in developing or poorer countries. One of the problems that I see is that if they get on board with this, they might be taking away from the funding that's already being provided to these poorer countries in the form of health, education, women's rights, infrastructure, and construction. Do you feel that these funds that are already allocated to these poorer countries might be siphoned off these critical projects just to actually feed the low carbon projects?
That's the problem. We don't want to see that.
Yeah.
We want to see new additional finance. We cannot divert, because that's not action. That's not climate action. If you're diverting finance from one project to meet needs of another project, that's not climate action. The real action means new additional finance to protect people, to protect communities, to protect people's health, and to ensure that developing countries, low and middle income countries, have a chance to survive.
Okay. Shweta Narayan, thank you very much for joining us live for us in Dubai at COP28. Do appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.